I do want to talk a little Baylor basketball. Baylor basketball did secure another huge commitment last night, and I might be butchering this name, so I just want to apologize in advance. I've not heard anybody actually say his name out loud, but it's Maikcol Perez, an Italian basketball player, 17 years old. He's a 6'8", described as a point forward, ball handling forward from Italy. It really has made his name in the FIBA World Cup circuit in the last couple of seasons. He made the All-Star 5 in his last 2 FIBA World Cups, the U16 and the U17 FIBA World Cups. This last one, he was right alongside American stars AJ Dibonsa and Cameron Boozer. Were also in that All-Star 5 with Maikcol Perez, and he actually beat Koa Pete, who committed to Arizona, right, for that All-Star 5 this past summer. He is a really intriguing prospect, not a immediate player, I don't think. Described more as a project. He's not an excellent shooter. But when I was watching his tape last night, in a weird way, stick with me on this, I am not comparing the two. Perez is not this good. But reminded me a little bit of Luka Doncic in his game. And by that, I mean the way he likes to play is take the ball into the lane and then outwork you in the lane to get a decent mid-range or even close-range jump shot or hook shot, or work you into the lane to find the slasher or to find the open man for the 3 ball. Really reminded me of Luka's game in that aspect. He's not nearly the shooter Luka is, but in terms of being able to get into the paint, penetrate a defense, and then either outwork you at the block, he's got some incredible skill down low on the block, or to find an open man on a cut for a bucket. Perez is elite at that. In the championship game against the United States at the FIBA U17 games last summer, he had 18 points, 8 assists, and 8 rebounds to lead Italy to that silver medal. Hey, great comp, Scotty B. Scotty B says he's similar to Jeremy Sohan. I think that's a really good comp, actually. I think that's a really good comp. I think he's a little more raw than Sohan was when he got to Baylor. But here's the deal. I've talked on this show about how I wish Scott Drew would get back to those development stories where he takes some really raw prospects and elevates them to NBA caliber talent. He did it for years with kids like Taurean Prince, Quincy Acey, Corey Jefferson. None of those guys were considered NBA caliber players when they got to Baylor. They all left Baylor as NBA players. And this is a player who I think could develop for 2 or 3 seasons under Drew into a really sharp NBA prospect. Great word, bear the truth. Coach Drew building for the future, developing a core. I think Iguodala and Perez both slot into that. I think Perez probably more ready to play right away than Iguodala is. But both of those guys are players who I don't think they commit to Baylor to play right away. And what's so exciting about both of those guys committing to Baylor after I think kind of your big pieces for 2025, 2026 were already set is they probably committed to Baylor under a pretense that they were going to develop, that they are not going to be the stars day one, season one for Scott Drew, that I am sure Scott Drew pitched them on their role, that maybe in 25, 26, you aren't playing a ton of minutes like you might expect, but by 26, 27, you're a key piece. And hey, if you're at Baylor 2 or 3 seasons, you're going to be an NBA player. I think Scott Drew sold that to Iguodala, not just the kid coming, but his father, who was obviously an NBA star. I think Scott Drew probably pitched that development to the Iguodala family. He probably pitched it to Lopez. Scotty B, maybe he pitched it to Soyoye, and maybe I'm butchering that name, but same kind of deal. I think he's a red shirt this year if Scott Drew can do it. I don't think he plays right away. So that's what I see coming for this Baylor basketball team. I did want to look at how this impacts the whole roster. So if you looked at this past season's roster, I think your clear pitfalls were you were way too guard dependent. You were often running out 4 guys who were like 6'5" or shorter to play against. When you play against just bigger, longer teams, that wasn't going to be effective. And then when Josh O goes down, your best inside player by 1.5 miles is Omier, who's like 6'8". So you were way too small last season at Baylor, and you weren't deep enough at the forward position. I want you to look at this Baylor basketball roster for next season, and I want you to notice the height and the length. I want you to notice that outside of Obi Agbum and J.J. White, who will get heavy minutes at the point guard spot, it's 6'6", 6'6", 6'7", 6'9", 6'9". And all of those players can play multiple spots on the floor. When we talk about positionless basketball, Cameron Carr and Tunde Yesufu are kind of positionless players. Andre Iguodala can play 2 through 4. Michael Ratai can play 3 and 4. Perez, we just talked about, could potentially play the 1 as well as the 4. And so you've really got positionless basketball, as Scotty B just said, size and versatility. That's exactly what's going on here. This roster is long, and they are tall, and you can run a bunch of combination 5s out of this roster that are going to be really, really dangerous in Big 12 play. Of course, and you are so much deeper at the center position with Jocelyn Bodo and Caden Powell, both proven college basketball players who are 6'10" and 7 foot. So much better than your second best inside player being 6'7", 6'8". I did want to go ahead and guess at the starting lineup for next season. And we do not know, by the way. Part of the other thing I love about this roster is with all these guys transferring in, I think it's going to be some fierce competition to get into that starting 5. But I did want to project my starting 5 as of today, and it would be these guys. I think Obi Agbum's your starting 1. I think he's probably your leading scorer for the Bears this next season. Elite shot creator, elite scorer at Wyoming. It would shock me if he's not Baylor's leading scorer next season. I think Tunde starts at the 2, and I only think that because I think J.J. White is going to be backing up the point guard spot, and I don't think any of these other smaller guards are going to get heavy minutes. I think Cameron Carr could start at the 2, but I think it's more likely to be Tunde because I think Skillings and Ratai start at the wings. Ratai is a lock to start. I think he's your second or third leading scorer this next season for Baylor. Really efficient player at Oregon State. Skillings, Scott Drew likes a lot. I don't think he's a guy that's going to contribute crazy numbers, but I think he's a guy who knows how to play in the Big 12, knows how to play defense in the Big 12, and will probably start at the 3. And then Jocelyn Bodo to me is your starting center at the 7-foot spot. Caden Powell, I think, will play probably equal minutes off the bench at center to Jocelyn Bodo. And then I think you see some heavy minutes from J.J. White, perhaps Cameron Carr, and perhaps Perez, and, of course, Powell, like I just said. But this team is already so much deeper than last season's team, especially inside, and so much more flexible. And again, you could run a lot of combo lineups out. You could start JJ and Obi if you wanted to go guard heavy, 3-point shooting. Tunde could run your 3. You could start Cameron Carr. You could start Perez at the 1 if you wanted Agbum to play the 2. I mean, there's all sorts of combinations with this starting lineup. I'm just really, really pleased with what Scott Drew has done. And I think this commitment from Perez, an international star, FIBA U17 All-Star 5, right next to Cameron Boozer, right next to AJ Debonsa, it says a lot. It says a lot that he would commit to Baylor after I'm pretty sure Scott Drew would go to him and say, hey, you're not going to start, but we think we can develop you into an NBA guy. I think all arrows are pointing up for this Baylor basketball roster. There was a lot of fear in this Baylor basketball fan base when Scott Drew lost that entire roster, and really culminating in Rob Wright, of course, transferring interconference to BYU. But I got to tell you, I really, really like this team Scott Drew's putting together. It reminds me of some of the best Baylor basketball teams he's ever had. Defensively, going to be stout. You've got all those 6'6", 6'7" players playing positionless basketball, able to switch on all positions. You're going to have a great defensive team led by a great anchor in the middle in Bodo, and then you're just going to be able to score from all sides. The one area where this team is going to be weaker than last year's team is the three-point ball. You've got guys like Agbem, White, Ratai who can shoot the three, but you don't have 5 or 6 dudes who can just reliably stroke from deep. You're going to need to develop that a little bit, and I think it's going to be really paramount to run an efficient offense that gets Yesufu to the basket, that gets Ratai to the basket. I think that's going to be really important. It's going to be a different look than the past few seasons for Baylor basketball, but I think it's going to be better. I think the Bears are going to be better for it. I'm really, really, really excited for this Baylor basketball roster. Thanks, Bear the Truth and Scotty B, for joining us and commenting live as always. If you're watching this back, make sure to like and subscribe. Over 10,000 subscribers now. It's incredible. Thanks for joining us this week for the Pete Souza Show.